Sarah McAllister never thought she'd be starting over at 45. After her husband's death, the townsfolk who once welcomed her now whisper that she's too old to run the ranch alone. With no family left and winter approaching, she faces a choice: leave the only home she's known or watch it crumble around her. But when a chance encounter brings her face to face with Chief Running River, the wealthiest horse trader in the Wyoming Territory, everything changes. He sees beyond her years to the strength in her heart, the skill in her hands, and the beauty in her determination. As their worlds collide, he makes an unexpected offer that could save more than just her ranch. Will Sarah find the courage to defy society's judgment and accept a love that breaks every frontier rule? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The cracked leather of Tom's old ranch deed felt warm in Sarah's weathered hands as she traced his signature with her fingertip. Dawn painted the Wyoming sky in shades of amber and rose, but she'd been awake for hours, listening to the wind whistle through gaps in the barn's wooden walls. Each day brought new challenges, new repairs she couldn't afford, new whispers from town about the widow who wouldn't accept her fate. Sarah tucked the deed into her shirt pocket, close to her heart, and grabbed her tools. The barn door needed fixing before the morning chill gave way to another scorching September day. Her muscles protested as she lifted the heavy hammer. Time had taken its toll, but determination ran deeper than pain. "Tom taught me everything about running this place," she murmured to the morning air, "except how to do it alone." The familiar weight of grief settled on her shoulders, but she shrugged it off. 6 months of mourning hadn't fixed a single fence post or fed a single head of cattle. The ranch demanded attention, regardless of her heart's condition. A rhythmic pounding echoed across the yard as she worked, each strike of the hammer a defiant answer to those who said a woman her age had no business running a ranch. The sound drew unwanted attention. Preston Wallace's expensive boots appeared in her peripheral vision, crushing the dried grass beneath them. "Mrs. McAllister," his voice dripped with false concern. "Still trying to keep this place together?" Sarah didn't look up. "Good morning, Mr. Wallace. Something I can help you with?" "Actually, I came to help you." He moved closer, casting his shadow over her work. "The bank's board meeting is tomorrow. They're voting on calling in your loan." Now she did look up, squinting against the sun. Preston Wallace stood like a vulture in a tailored suit, his silver watch chain glinting. At 35, he'd inherited his father's ranch and his taste for expanding it by absorbing struggling neighbors. "That loan's not due for another year," Sarah said, her throat tightening. "Times are changing, Mrs. McAllister. The bank's concerned about risk." His eyes swept over the patched barn, the empty corrals. "I'm prepared to make you a fair offer. Better than auction prices, at least." Sarah's grip tightened on the hammer. "This ranch isn't for sale, Mr. Wallace. Not to you, not to anyone. Be reasonable." His gentle tone couldn't mask the steel beneath. "You're not getting any younger. A woman alone can't manage 300 acres. It's not natural." "Natural?" Sarah stood, drawing herself to her full height. "Was it natural when I helped birth every calf on this ranch for 20 years? When I mended fences and drove cattle alongside my husband? When did my age make my experience worth less than your inheritance?" Color rose in Wallace's cheeks. "I'm trying to help you avoid embarrassment. Think about your reputation." "My reputation?" Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The town already treats me like I'm invisible. What's left to lose?" "Everything," Wallace said softly. "You have until the board meeting tomorrow to consider my offer. After that—" He shrugged, adjusted his hat. "Well, winter's coming. Hate to see you freeze out here alone." He turned and walked away, leaving Sarah with a hammer in her hand and ice in her veins. She watched until his horse disappeared down the dirt road, then sank onto a nearby stump. The deed in her pocket felt heavier than before. The morning sun climbed higher, warming her back as she surveyed her land. The barn might be weathered, but it stood strong. The well still flowed sweet and clear. The south pasture would yield enough hay for winter if she could hire help for the harvest. She had 2 good horses left in the stable, though she'd have to sell one soon if things didn't improve. "I'm not too old," she whispered fiercely. "I'm not done." But as she returned to her repairs, doubt crept in like morning shadows. The ranch had been her home for 23 years. Her dream for even longer. She'd poured her youth into this land alongside Tom, believing they'd grow old here together. Now, half of that dream lay buried in the small cemetery on the hill, and the other half teetered on the edge of tomorrow's bank meeting. Sarah worked until the sun stood high overhead, her shirt damp with sweat, her hands blistered despite their calluses. The barn door hung true now, but a dozen other repairs waited. They always waited. She was running out of time, money, and options, but she wasn't running out of determination. Not yet. As she gathered her tools, a cloud of dust rose on the horizon. Another visitor. Sarah straightened her back, lifted her chin. Whatever came next, she'd face it standing tall. She was Sarah McAllister, and this was her land. For now, at least, that had to be enough. The monthly horse auction in Sweetwater drew crowds from across the territory, a gathering of hopes and desperation in equal measure. Sarah led her 2 remaining horses, Storm, a spirited black stallion, and Pearl, a gentle mare, through the press of bodies and whispers. The morning sun had barely cleared the mountains, but already the auction grounds hummed with activity. "That's Tom McAllister's widow," she heard someone murmur. "Shame about the ranch." Sarah kept her eyes forward, her spine straight. News travelled fast in small towns, and Preston Wallace's visit yesterday had already become common knowledge. The weight of an intricately beaded medicine pouch, Tom's gift from a Cheyenne trader years ago, hung heavy around her neck, its familiar presence giving her strength. A sudden hush fell over the crowd. Sarah turned to see what had caused the shift in atmosphere. A group of riders approached from the east, their horses' hooves kicking up golden dust in the morning light. At their head rode a man whose presence commanded attention without demanding it. Chief Running River sat tall in his saddle, wearing a mix of traditional Cheyenne clothing and European dress that spoke of a foot in both worlds. His black hair, streaked with silver, was worn long and neat, and his face bore the dignified lines of a man in his early 50s. But it was his eyes that held Sarah's attention, dark, intelligent, and measuring everything they saw. The horse. "Chief," someone whispered nearby. "Richest trader in the territory." Sarah had heard of him, of course. Everyone had. Running River had built an empire breeding and trading horses, combining traditional Cheyenne horsecraft with modern business. Akuman. His wealth was legendary, as was his fair dealing with both natives and settlers. Storm chose that moment to rear, pulling at his lead rope. Without thinking, Sarah moved with the horse's motion, speaking soft words as she brought him back under. Control. When she looked up again, she found Running River watching her with quiet interest. The auction began, and Sarah's heart sank as prices remained low. A drought in the south had flooded the market with sellers, driving values down. When it came time to present Storm, she led him into the ring with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Fine stallion," the auctioneer announced, but his voice lacked enthusiasm. "Who'll start the bidding at $50, the crowd muttered. Storm danced nervously, sensing the tension. $30, someone called. Sarah's throat tightened. Storm was worth 5 times that. 35, 40. The bid stalled. Sarah felt her last hope of raising enough money slipping away. Then a quiet voice cut through the murmurs. $200. The crowd parted as Chief Running River stepped forward. He wasn't looking at Storm, but at Sarah, his eyes keen with assessment. "Show me how you handle him," he said. Sarah didn't hesitate. She led Storm to the center of the ring, then with a gentle touch and softer word, asked him to demonstrate the training she'd invested years in perfecting. The stallion responded beautifully, moving through his paces with grace and power. Now, without the lead, Running River requested. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Working a stallion at liberty in a strange place was risky. Sarah met Running River's gaze, reading the challenge there. She unclipped the lead and stepped back. For the next few minutes, the auction grounds fell silent, except for Sarah's quiet commands and Storm's responsive movements. Horse and woman moved in perfect harmony, years of trust evident in every step. When she finally stopped, Storm stood quietly beside her, his coat gleaming in the morning sun. Running River nodded once. 200 for the stallion, and 150 for the mare. It was a generous offer, more than fair in the current market, but it wasn't enough to save the ranch. Sarah stroked Storm's neck, knowing she had to accept anyway. They're a matched pair, Running River continued, surprising her, worth more together than apart. Like many things, he reached into his coat and withdrew a folded paper. I have a proposal for you, Mrs. McAllister, one that could benefit us both. The crowd leaned in, eager for gossip, but Running River gestured toward a quieter corner of the grounds. Sarah hesitated only a moment before following. She'd come here expecting to sell her horses. She hadn't expected to find hope. As they walked, Running River spoke quietly. I've heard of your skill with horses and your current situation. News travels fast, Sarah said dryly. So do opportunities, if one is wise enough to recognize them. He handed her the paper. I'm establishing a new breeding program. I need someone who understands both Western and traditional methods, someone with experience, patience, and nothing left to lose. Sarah unfolded the paper, a contract for employment, with terms that made her breath catch. The salary alone would cover her loan payments. Why me? She asked, suspicious of kindness after so many months of judgment. Running River's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. Because you just showed everyone here that age doesn't determine skill, and wisdom doesn't expire, and because those horses trust you. I've learned to trust horses' judgment of character. He reached into his vest and withdrew something else. A small pouch similar to the one she wore, but newer, its beadwork catching the morning light. In my culture, he said, age brings respect, not dismissal. Experience is valued, not discarded. He offered her the pouch. Consider my proposal. You'll find me at the Golden Star Hotel until tomorrow noon. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Sarah holding a contract, a beaded pouch, and the first real hope she'd felt in months. Behind her, the auction continued, but she barely heard it. Her mind was already racing with possibilities. She opened the new pouch, finding a small carved horse inside, a mare with a foal, symbolizing new beginnings. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the meaning clear. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a chance to prove everyone wrong. Storm nudged her shoulder gently, as if offering his opinion. Sarah smiled, tucking both the contract and the pouch safely away. She had decisions to make and not much time to make them. But for the first time since Tom's death, the future held more promise than pain. The town hall's wooden benches creaked under the weight of what seemed like half of Sweetwater's population. Sarah sat alone in the back row, the town meeting notice crumpled in her hand. Its official language couldn't mask the true purpose of this gathering, deciding her fate. Mayor Thompson's gavel struck wood. This emergency session of the town council will come to order. Sarah watched Preston Wallace settle into a front row seat, his satisfaction barely concealed. He'd arranged this meeting, claiming community concerns about her ranch's condition required immediate attention. First order of business, the mayor announced. Discussion of the McAllister property's impact on neighboring land values. Wallace stood smoothly. If I may address the council. At the mayor's nod, he turned to face the crowd. Friends and neighbors, none of us want to seem unkind, but we must consider the greater good of our community. The McAllister Ranch's deteriorating condition threatens all our properties. Sarah's fingers dug into the rough wood of the bench. Every word was carefully chosen to wound without seeming cruel. Furthermore, Wallace continued, there's the matter of safety. A woman alone on that much land, at her age, we'd be remiss not to express our concerns. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sarah recognized the faces around her, people who'd attended her wedding, shared meals at her table, celebrated births, and mourned deaths alongside her and Tom. Now they avoided her eyes. Mrs. McAllister, Mayor Thompson's voice carried a false note of concern. Would you care to address these concerns? Sarah stood, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. My ranch has been part of this community for 23 years. In all that time, that was when Tom was alive. Someone interrupted. Things are different now. Different how? A new voice cut through the tension. Chief Running River stood in the doorway, his presence commanding immediate attention. He moved with deliberate grace to stand beside Sarah. Because she's a widow, or because she's no longer young? Wallace's face darkened. This is a town matter, Chief Running River. It doesn't concern you. I believe it does. Running River's voice remained calm. I've just entered into a business arrangement with Mrs. McAllister. Her ranch will be integral to my breeding program's expansion. The room erupted in whispers. Sarah felt the weight of every stare, but she lifted her chin.
Higher.
What kind of arrangement? Wallace demanded. A private one, Running River replied, between myself and Mrs. McAllister. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. While we appreciate your interest, Chief, there are concerns about the ranch's financial stability. My banker in Cheyenne would be happy to address those concerns. Running River's slight smile carried weight. Everyone knew his wealth and influence extended far beyond Sweetwater's borders. Wallace stepped forward, his mask of concern slipping. This is about more than money. There are cultural considerations, traditional values. Traditional values? Running River's eyebrow lifted. Like respecting elders, honoring experience? Perhaps you should specify which traditions you're defending, Mr. Wallace. The tension in the room shifted. Sarah watched faces in the crowd change as Running River's words sank in. Some looked ashamed, others thoughtful. I've known Sarah McAllister for exactly 1 day, Running River continued. In that time, I've seen her handle horses with more skill than most young men possess, face public humiliation with dignity, and defend her right to live on her own terms. If your traditions can't accommodate such strength, perhaps they need examination. Wallace's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Now see here. No, you see here. Sarah found her voice, drawing strength from Running River's presence. I've worked this land for 23 years. Age hasn't diminished my ability, it's enhanced it. I'm not asking for charity or special treatment. I'm asking for the same respect you'd give any other rancher. An older woman in the third row stood up. Sarah helped deliver my grandson last winter when the doctor was snowed in. Didn't hear anyone questioning her age then. She helped me break my new stallion last spring, another voice added. Did a better job than any young buck in the territory. More voices joined in, sharing stories of Sarah's competence and kindness. The tide of opinion was turning, and Wallace knew it. He gathered his dignity around him like a cloak. The bank's board will still meet tomorrow, he said stiffly. Business is business. Yes, it is. Running River's voice carried a note of finality. And Mrs. McAllister's business arrangements are her own, unless there are other community concerns to address. Mayor Thompson's gavel fell again. Meeting adjourned. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah turned to Running River. Thank you, but why? Because some battles need witnesses, he replied, and some warriors need allies. He offered her his arm. Shall we discuss our business arrangement over dinner? I believe the whole town is quite interested in the details. Sarah looked at his offered arm, then at the watching townspeople. In that moment, she made a choice that would change more than just her future. She took his arm, and together they walked out into the golden evening light, leaving whispers and speculation in their wake. The town hall's wooden benches creaked under the weight of what seemed like half of Sweetwater's population. Sarah sat alone in the back row, the town meeting notice crumpled in her hand. Its official language couldn't mask the true purpose of this gathering, deciding her fate. Mayor Thompson's gavel struck wood. This emergency session of the town council will come to order. Sarah watched Preston Wallace settle into a front row seat, his satisfaction barely concealed. He'd arranged this meeting claiming community concerns about her ranch's condition required immediate attention. First order of business, the mayor announced, discussion of the McAllister property's impact on neighboring land values. Wallace stood smoothly. If I may address the council. At the mayor's nod, he turned to face the crowd. Friends and neighbors, none of us want to seem unkind. But we must consider the greater good of our community. The McAllister Ranch's deteriorating condition threatens all our properties. Sarah's fingers dug into the rough wood of the bench. Every word was carefully chosen to wound without seeming cruel. Furthermore, Wallace continued, there's the matter of safety. A woman alone on that much land at her age. We'd be remiss not to express our concerns. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sarah recognized the faces around her, people who'd attended her wedding, shared meals at her table, celebrated births and mourned deaths alongside her and Tom. Now they avoided her eyes. Mrs. McAllister, Mayor Thompson's voice carried a false note of concern. Would you care to address these concerns? Sarah stood, her heart pounding but her voice steady. My ranch has been part of this community for 23 years. In all that time, that was when Tom was alive, someone interrupted. Things are different now. Different how? A new voice cut through the tension. Chief Running River stood in the doorway, his presence commanding immediate attention. He moved with deliberate grace to stand beside Sarah, because she's a widow or because she's no longer young. Wallace's face darkened. This is a town matter, Chief Running River. It doesn't concern you. I believe it does. Running Rivers. Her voice remained calm. I've just entered into a business arrangement with Mrs. McAllister. Her ranch will be integral to my breeding program's expansion. The room erupted in whispers. Sarah felt the weight of every stare, but she lifted her chin. Higher! What kind of arrangement? Wallace demanded. A private one, Running River replied, between myself and Mrs. McAllister. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. While we appreciate your interest, Chief, there are concerns about the ranch's financial stability. My banker in Cheyenne would be happy to address those concerns. Running River's slight smile carried weight. Everyone knew his wealth and influence extended far beyond Sweetwater's borders. Wallace stepped forward, his mask of concern slipping. This is about more than money. There are cultural considerations, traditional values. Traditional values? Running River's eyebrow lifted. Like respecting elders, honoring experience? Perhaps you should specify which traditions you're defending, Mr. Wallace. The tension in the room shifted. Sarah watched faces in the crowd change as Running River's words sank in. Some looked ashamed, others thoughtful. I've known Sarah McAllister for exactly 1 day, Running River continued. In that time, I've seen her handle horses with more skill than most young men possess, face public humiliation with dignity, and defend her right to live on her own terms. If your traditions can't accommodate such strength, perhaps they need examination. Wallace's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Now see here. No, you see here. Sarah found her voice, drawing strength from Running River's presence. I've worked this land for 23 years. Age hasn't diminished my ability. It's enhanced it. I'm not asking for charity or special treatment. I'm asking for the same respect you'd give any other rancher. An older woman in the third row stood up. Sarah helped deliver my grandson last winter when the doctor was snowed in. Didn't hear anyone questioning her age then. She helped me. Break my new stallion last spring, another voice added. Did a better job than any young buck in the territory. More voices joined in, sharing stories of Sarah's competence and kindness. The tide of opinion was turning, and Wallace knew it. He gathered his dignity around him like a cloak. "The bank's board will still meet tomorrow," he said stiffly. "Business is business." "Yes, it is." Running River's voice carried a note of finality. "And Mrs. McAllister's business arrangements are her own. Unless there are other community concerns to address." Mayor Thompson's gavel fell again. "Meeting adjourned." As the crowd dispersed, Sarah turned to Running River. "Thank you." "But why?" "Because some battles need witnesses," he replied, "and some warriors need allies." He offered her his arm. "Shall we discuss our business arrangement over dinner? I believe the whole town is quite interested in the details." Sarah looked at his offered arm, then at the watching townspeople. In that moment, she made a choice that would change more than just her future. She took his arm, and together they walked out into the golden evening light, leaving whispers and speculation in their wake. Dawn painted the small hillside cemetery in shades of pearl and gold. Sarah knelt before Tom's headstone, her wedding ring cool against her palm as she traced its worn gold surface. She'd never taken it off, not once in 23 years of marriage or 6 months of widowhood. "I need your help with this one, Tom," she whispered. "I need to know if I'm doing the right thing." The morning breeze stirred the prairie grass, carrying the scent of sage and memories. She could almost hear Tom's laugh, see his eyes crinkling at the corners as he teased her about overthinking things. "You always said I was stubborn." She smiled through threatening tears, said it was what you loved best about me, even when it drove you crazy. The headstone remained silent, its granite face catching the early light. Thomas McAllister, beloved, husband 1850–1894. The date seemed too small to contain all that he had been. Running River is different from what I expected. He sees me, Tom. Not as your widow, not as someone too old or too helpless. He sees me as I am. A meadowlark called from a nearby fence post, its morning song clear and sweet. Sarah remembered other mornings, other conversations with Tom as they planned their future together. "Remember what you told me when your father opposed our marriage. Love ain't about permission, Sal. It's about courage." "Well, I'm trying to be courageous now." She opened her hand, studying the ring that had marked her as Tom's wife for so long. The gold caught the sunlight, warm and familiar against her skin. "I'm not replacing you," she said firmly. "No one could, but maybe there's room in a heart for more than one kind of love." Hoofbeats approached along the cemetery path. Sarah didn't need to turn to know it was Running River. He'd promised to meet her here, to honor her past before they moved toward their future. "Good morning," he said quietly, dismounting. "I hope I'm not intruding." "No." Sarah rose slowly, her knees protesting the morning chill. "Tom would have wanted to meet you properly." Running River stepped forward, placing a small bundle of sage and sweetgrass at the base of the headstone. The gesture, bridging their different traditions of honoring the dead, touched something deep in Sarah's heart. "Maria rests in sacred ground near the mountains," he said. "I still visit her, speak to her. Some bonds don't break with death." "No, they don't." Sarah looked down at her ring again. "But they can change, can't they? Like a river changing course while staying true to its nature." "My people believe that love is like water," Running River replied. "It finds its own path, nourishes what it touches, and cannot be held back by any barrier for long." A wagon rattled past on the distant road, carrying early morning gossip to town. Sarah could imagine the stories already spreading, the widow and the chief defying convention and common sense. "Tom's family won't understand," she said. "They barely speak to me now. This will give them reason to cut ties completely. And my people will whisper that I've forgotten our ways." Running River's voice held no bitterness, but wisdom teaches us that growth requires leaving safe harbors. Sarah touched the headstone one last time, feeling the rough texture beneath her fingers. Then, with deliberate care, she slipped her wedding ring off. "I'll always love you, Tom," she whispered, "but it's time to write a new chapter." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a leather cord, stringing the ring onto it. The morning light caught the gold as she fastened it around her neck, letting it rest alongside Tom's medicine pouch, past and future together, neither diminishing the other. Running River waited patiently, understanding the importance of this moment. When Sarah finally turned to him, her eyes were clear. "I'm ready," she said. He offered his arm, and together they walked back to their horses. Below them, Sweetwater was coming awake, smoke rising from chimneys, wagons moving along dusty streets. The town that had tried to write Sarah's story for her would soon discover she had plans of her own. As they rode down the hill, Sarah felt Tom's ring bouncing gently against her heart with each step. Not a shackle to the past, but a reminder of love's ability to transform and endure. She was no longer just Tom McAllister's widow. She was Sarah, a woman choosing her own path, carrying her memories like treasures while reaching for new dreams. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist, and with it the last of Sarah's doubts. Ahead lay the bank meeting, the town's reaction, and all the challenges that would come with defying convention. But for now, in this moment between past and future, she felt truly free. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and crisp, autumn painting the prairie in shades of gold and amber. Sarah stood before her mirror, studying her reflection, while Running River's sister, Morning Star, helped her dress in traditional Cheyenne wedding clothes. "The dress belonged to our grandmother," Morning Star explained, adjusting the intricate beadwork. "She, too, married in a time of change." Sarah touched the beautifully decorated buckskin, marveling at how the morning light caught the tiny beads. Beside her traditional dress lay the official marriage certificate, its crisp legal text a stark contrast to the ceremony about to unfold. "Your brother," Sarah began hesitantly, "he's risking much for this union." Morning Star's hands stilled. "Running River has always walked between worlds. Like you, he understands that tradition must bend or break." She smiled. "Besides, he hasn't smiled so much since Maria died." Outside, voices rose as more people arrived. The ceremony would blend both cultures, a Cheyenne blessing followed by a legal marriage before the territory judge. Not everyone approved, but enough supported them to make it possible. "They're here," Morning Star announced, peering through the window. Preston Wallace and his friends, watching from the road. Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Let them watch." The door opened, and Running River's eldest nephew entered, carrying a package wrapped in soft leather. "A gift from my uncle," he said, presenting it to Sarah. Inside lay a new medicine pouch, even more intricately beaded than the one Running River had given her at their first meeting. This one bore symbols from both their cultures, Cheyenne, patterns intertwined with Western motifs, telling the story of their unlikely union. "It represents the bridge we build," Running River had told her when designing it. "Neither side losing itself, but both growing stronger together." Sarah fastened it around her neck, letting it rest beside Tom's ring. Past and future, side by side, the ceremony space had been prepared in the open prairie between their two properties. Sweetgrass burned in the morning air as Sarah walked toward the gathering, Morning Star at her side. She saw faces from both worlds, Running River's family and tribal members, townsfolk who'd chosen to support them, and even a few of Tom's relatives who'd decided that love mattered more than convention. Running River waited for her, dressed in a chief's formal attire, but wearing a Western vest that Maria had made for him. Their eyes met across the space, and Sarah saw in his gentle smile the same quiet strength that had first drawn her to him. The tribal elder began the blessing. In Cheyenne, the ancient words carrying across the prairie wind. Sarah didn't understand them all, but she felt their power, their connection to the land beneath her feet and the sky above. When it came time to exchange promises, they spoke in both languages, each learning the other's words. Running River's voice was steady as he pledged partnership, respect, and the patience to let love grow in its own time. Sarah's response came from her heart, blending traditional vows with her own truth. I bring to this union not just myself, but all that I am, my past, my struggles, my dreams. I promise to face our future with courage, to respect our differences, and to believe that love knows no boundaries. The territory judge stepped forward next, his legal words brief but necessary. As he pronounced them husband and wife, Sarah felt the weight of the moment, not an ending or a beginning, but a transformation. Running River took her hand, and together they faced their gathered witnesses. The morning sun caught the beadwork. On their clothes, the medicine pouches at their throats, the rings that now graced their fingers, symbols of a union that defied easy definition. Preston Wallace and his friends had drawn closer, perhaps hoping to see doubt or regret. Instead, they saw two people standing tall, their dignity unmarred by whispers or disapproval. "My wife," Running River said softly in English, then repeated it in Cheyenne. "My husband," Sarah replied, the words feeling both strange and right on her tongue. As they walked together toward the celebration feast, Sarah heard the voices of both communities beginning to mingle, tentatively at first, then with growing warmth. Change came slowly to the frontier, but it came all the same. Morning Star appeared at her side, pressing a small object into her hand. "Welcome to the family, sister." Sarah opened her palm to find a single, perfect eagle feather. "Thank you," she said, understanding the honor it represented. The feather caught the breeze, dancing in her grasp like hope made visible. Behind her, two worlds began the slow work of becoming one, drawn together by the power of two people who dared to choose. Love over convention, courage over comfort, and hope over fear. Sarah stood at the edge of Running River's ranch, their ranch now, studying the hand-drawn map they'd created together. The morning sun cast long shadows across the combined properties, 300 acres of McAllister land joining seamlessly with Running River's larger spread. On paper, at least, the union looked perfect. "The south pasture needs clearing," Running River said, walking up beside her. "Good grazing land, going to waste." "Tom and I always meant to clear it," Sarah replied. "Never had enough hands for the work. Now we do." He gestured toward a group of young Cheyenne men approaching on horseback. "My nephews are eager to learn your Western ranching methods." The riders drew closer, led by young Hawk, Running River's oldest nephew. They dismounted with fluid grace, treating Sarah with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "Aunt," young Hawk said carefully in English, the word still new on his tongue. "Uncle says you can teach us about cattle," Sarah smiled at the title, "and you can teach me about horses. Fair trade." The young men exchanged glances, then grins broke out across their faces. The ice was broken. They spent the morning in the south pasture, Sarah demonstrating techniques for clearing brush, while learning Cheyenne words for different tools and plants. The work was hard, but shared stories and laughter made it lighter. "Your methods are different," young Hawk observed during a water break, "but the land doesn't care who tends it, only how." Sarah wiped sweat from her brow. "Wisdom comes in many languages." By midday, Running River's sister Morning Star arrived with food and news from town. "The bank manager's wife visited the trading post," she reported. "Says her husband's worried about losing Preston Wallace's business over the loan approval." "Let him worry," Running River said calmly. "Wallace's influence isn't what it was." Sarah watched the young men return to work, their movements becoming more confident with each task. "We're building something stronger than Wallace can break." Running River touched her arm gently. "Come, there's something I want to show you." They rode to the highest point on the property, where the wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. Below them, their combined lands stretched out like a patchwork quilt, McAllister grass pastures blending into Running River's horse runs. "Maria loved this spot," Running River said softly. "Said you could see tomorrow from here." Sarah understood what it cost him to share this. Tom had a place like that, up by the North Creek. "Show me sometime." "I will." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their people working together below. Young Hawk was teaching one of the McAllister ranch hands the Cheyenne method of rope work, while Morning Star showed two young women from town how to prepare healing herbs, the old ones. Say change is like a river, Running River mused. Fight it and you drown, flow with it, and it carries you home, Sarah finished, remembering her grandmother's similar wisdom. A rider approached from town, Jimmy, the banker's son, looking nervous but determined. Sarah tensed, expecting more trouble. Mrs. Chief Running River's wife, the boy stammered when he reached them. Pa wants to know if you're still offering those horse-breaking lessons. Says maybe having some trained horses might help the bank's business. Sarah and Running River exchanged glances. A small victory, but significant. Tell your father we'll discuss it, Running River said, after he approves the loan extension. Jimmy grinned, catching the negotiating lesson. Yes, sir. Ma also wanted to know if, he turned to Sarah, if you might teach her about those healing herbs everyone's talking about. Your mother's welcome any time, Sarah said, remembering how the banker's wife had avoided her eyes in town just weeks ago. After Jimmy rode away, Running River chuckled. You've started something, wife. We've started something, Sarah corrected. She touched the medicine pouch at her neck, feeling Tom's ring beneath it. Think they're ready for it? They better be. Running River's eyes crinkled. Because we're not stopping. That evening, they hosted their first proper dinner as a married couple. The long table stretched from the ranch house kitchen out onto the porch, accommodating family from both worlds. Morning Star brought traditional dishes while Sarah served her famous apple pie. Languages mixed and mingled like the food, English and Cheyenne flowing back and forth as stories were shared. Sarah moved among their guests, feeling the warmth of belonging. She wasn't just Tom's widow anymore, nor simply Running River's wife. She was becoming something new, a bridge between worlds, a builder of understanding. Later, as the moon rose over their joined lands, Running River found her on the porch. Happy? He asked simply. Sarah looked at their people, still talking, and laughing together, at the land that now held double promise, at the man beside her, who had given her not just a new life, but a new purpose. Yes, she said, I am. The night wind carried the scent of sage and sweetgrass, of change and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, under the vast Wyoming sky, Sarah McAllister Running River was exactly where she belonged. Time flowed like water over stones, smoothing rough edges. As autumn deepened into winter, Sarah and Running River developed their own rhythm, recording their daily lives in a shared journal that bridged their two languages. Each evening they would write about their day, Sarah in English, Running River in Cheyenne, both learning to read the other's words. How do you say stubborn mare in Cheyenne? Sarah asked one evening, looking up from the journal. They sat by the fire in what had once been her lonely kitchen, now warmed by shared presence. Running River's eyes twinkled. Which mare? The black one? Or my wife? Sarah threw a biscuit at him, surprising herself with the playfulness of the gesture. He caught it deftly, his smile deepening the lines around his eyes. The black one, she said, trying to sound stern. Though some might say, there are similarities. Both beautiful, he replied softly. Both strong-willed. Both worth the patience they demand. Sarah felt warmth rise in her cheeks. These moments of tenderness still caught her off guard, like sudden sunlight through storm clouds. Their comfortable evening was interrupted by urgent knocking. Young Hawk burst in, snow dusting his shoulders. Uncle! Aunt! Raiders hit the Watson place! Took their best horses. Running River was on his feet instantly. Casualties? No, but Mary Watson's badly shaken. They threatened to return. Sarah was already reaching for her coat. The Watsons were new settlers, barely prepared for winter, let alone horse thieves. How many horses? She asked. 4, their whole string. Running River touched the weapons hanging by the door. The track will be fresh with this snow. Too fresh, Sarah said. They'll expect immediate pursuit. We need to think this through. He paused, studying her face. They'd faced their first real disagreement, and how they handled it would shape their future. The Watsons can't survive. Winter without those horses, young Hawk argued. No, Sarah agreed, but we can loan them horses while we plan this properly. She turned to Running River. You taught me about patience, husband. Let's use it. He was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Wisdom speaks. Young Hawk, bring the Watsons here tonight. We'll plan by firelight and move by strategy, not anger. As young Hawk rode out, Running River touched Sarah's arm. You're learning our ways well, and you're teaching me to see beyond the immediate trail. She met his eyes. We're stronger. Together, aren't we? Yes. He helped her with her coat, though I never expected my wise wife to be teaching me my own lessons. They rode through the snowy night to the Watson homestead, the full moon turning the landscape silver. Mary Watson, a young mother of 3, was trying to be brave, but her hands shook as she served them coffee. Jim's gone to alert the sheriff, she said. But with this weather, you'll stay with us tonight, Sarah said firmly. All of you. Running River's people know these lands better than any thieves. But would that be proper? Mary glanced between them uncertainly. Sarah almost laughed. Propriety seemed a fragile thing against survival. More proper than freezing out here alone. Running River spoke quietly in Cheyenne to young Hawk, who nodded and rode out to gather scouts. To Mary he said, your children will be safe, and tomorrow we'll begin tracking properly. As they helped the Watsons pack essential items, Sarah watched Running River with the youngest child, a girl of 4 who was frightened by the night's events. He spoke to her softly in both languages, teaching her simple Cheyenne words until she giggled. Later, with the Watsons settled in their guest rooms and scouts positioned around the property, Sarah and Running River returned to their journal by the fire. You're good with children, she said carefully. The subject of their age and children had remained unspoken between them. Maria couldn't have them, he replied after a moment. We found other ways to build family. Sarah touched Tom's ring at her neck. Tom and I tried for years. It wasn't meant to be. And yet look at our family now. He gestured to the house, full of people seeking shelter and support. Life gives different gifts than we expect, she wrote in the journal, learning to shape Cheyenne characters. How do you say unexpected blessings? He taught her the words, then added his own entry. Sarah recognized enough characters now to see he was writing about her, about their growing understanding of each other. Tomorrow will be difficult, he said, as they prepared for bed. The raiders won't give up easily. No, Sarah agreed. But neither will we. In the dark, his hand, who found hers. They had moved beyond the careful distance of their early marriage, finding comfort in each other's presence. Not the passionate love of youth, but something deeper, a love built on respect, understanding, and the daily choice to face life together. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering their joined lands in pristine white. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight, in their warm home full of people who trusted them, Sarah and Running River had found their own kind of peace. The threatening letter arrived with the first spring thaw, its official-looking envelope bearing the territorial governor's seal. Sarah found it in their mailbox, while Running River was away negotiating horse trades in Cheyenne. Her hands trembled as she read the carefully worded threats disguised as legal concerns. The letter questioned the validity of their marriage license, citing outdated but unrepealed territorial laws about mixed unions. Preston Wallace's influence clearly reached further than they'd suspected. More trouble? Morningstar asked, coming up beside her. Sarah handed her the letter. Wallace has been busy while the snow kept us isolated. Morningstar's face darkened. As she read, he builds walls with paper and ink. We've faced worse. Have we? Sarah sank into a kitchen chair. This questions everything. Our marriage, our joint property rights, even our right to teach others. The winter had been surprisingly peaceful. After they'd tracked down the horse thieves and returned the Watsons' animals, their reputation for fairness and strength had grown. More settlers sought their help with horses and cattle. Town women visited regularly to learn Sarah's healing herbs, while their husbands came for Running River's horse-trading wisdom. But peace, it seemed, had made them complacent. "Look!" Morningstar pointed to the window. A group of riders approached. Preston Wallace and several men Sarah didn't recognize. "Perfect timing," Sarah muttered, squaring her shoulders. "Running River's gone, and they know it. They forget you're strong alone." Morningstar moved to the door. "I'll send young Hawk for the others." Wallace dismounted with elaborate courtesy, his smile sharp as a blade. "Mrs. McAllister, or should I say Mrs. Running River? The legality seems unclear." "The name is Sarah," she replied coldly. "State your business." "Merely a friendly visit." He held up a document. "And to deliver this court summons personally. The Territorial Committee is reviewing certain irregularities in local property arrangements." Sarah felt Morningstar tense beside her. "Our papers are in order." "Are they?" "A marriage license issued without proper tribal consultation. Property transfers that bypass traditional territorial procedures." Wallace's smile widened. "The governor's office is quite concerned about the precedent being set here." "The governor's office? Or your bank account?" Morningstar's voice cracked like a whip. Wallace ignored her, focusing on Sarah. "There's still a way to resolve this quietly. Sign the ranch over to my management, and these legal questions could disappear." "Like you tried to make me disappear?" Sarah stepped forward. "When you thought a widow my age would just fade away." "I was trying to help." "You were trying to steal my land." Sarah's voice carried across the yard, where ranch hands and tribe members had begun to gather. "Now you're trying to steal our dream of something better, something that threatens your small-minded power." Wallace's facade cracked slightly. "You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah. There are powerful men who don't want to see tribal influence expand. Men who believe certain traditions should be preserved. Traditions of theft and intimidation." Morningstar moved to Sarah's side. "Those traditions deserve to die." Young Hawk arrived with more of Running River's people. Wallace's men shifted uneasily in their saddles. "You have your summons," Wallace said, dropping the paper at Sarah's feet. "Court's in 3 weeks. I'd suggest you consider my offer before then." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Sarah, Running River's trade negotiations in Cheyenne might run into some unexpected complications. Shame if his reputation suffered just when you need it most." After they rode away, Sarah picked up the summons with shaking hands. All their work, their dreams of building bridges between communities, threatened by one man's greed and others' fear of change. "He's trying to isolate us," Morningstar said. "Divide us when we're apart. Then we won't let him." Sarah strode to the stable. "Ready, my horse. I'm riding to Cheyenne. Alone. It's 2 days' hard ride. My husband needs to know what's happening." Sarah checked her saddlebags. "And I need to prove something." "What?" "That I'm still Sarah McAllister, the woman who survived alone before. That being Running River's wife has made me stronger, not dependent." She mounted her horse. "Send runners to our friends in town. By the time I return with Running River, I want everyone to know what Wallace is trying to do." Morningstar nodded, understanding. "Go safely, sister. We'll be ready." Sarah rode out as the sun climbed higher, her heart pounding with determination and fear. Behind her, the ranch hummed with activity as their people mobilized. Before her lay a hard journey and an uncertain future, but she was no longer the desperate widow Wallace had tried to destroy. She was Sarah McAllister, Running River, and she had a family to fight for now. Sarah reached Cheyenne as the second day's sun was setting. Her horse lathered but strong, one of Running River's best. The territorial capital sprawled before her, its wooden buildings casting long shadows in the fading light. Her muscles ached from hard riding, but determination drove her forward. At the Silver Spur Hotel, she found chaos. A broken fence post lay across the hotel's entrance, symbol of the sabotage that had nearly injured several of Running River's prized horses. "Chiefs in the stables," a young Cheyenne boy told her, recognizing her from her visits. Bad men tried to spook horses, made them look unsafe for army contract. Sarah found Running River examining a nervous stallion, his face tight with controlled anger. He looked up as she entered, surprise and concern washing across his features. "Sarah, what's happened?" She handed him Wallace's letter and the summons. "This is only part of it. The accident here, it's connected." Running River read quickly, his expression darkening. "Wallace moves against us on multiple fronts. He thinks separating us makes us vulnerable." Sarah moved closer, touching his arm. "He's wrong." Running River's hand covered hers, warm and strong. "You rode 2 days to tell me this? To show them they can't divide us. And," she smiled slightly, "to remind myself that I'm still the woman who can handle her own trials." Pride flickered in his eyes. "As if I could forget." He turned to the stallion. "They spooked him badly, could have ruined months of training." "Show me." Together they worked with the horse, Sarah's gentle approach complementing Running River's experienced handling. By midnight, the stallion had calmed, and they'd developed a plan. "The army contract is crucial," Running River explained as they shared a late meal in his hotel room. "It would give us resources to fight Wallace's legal challenges, and legitimacy in the territory's eyes," Sarah added, "which is why he tried to sabotage it. He underestimates us." Running River's voice carried quiet certainty. "Tomorrow, you'll show the army officers how we train horses using both our methods. They've never seen anything like your gentle braking technique." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Me? It's your contract. Our contract. Our future." He touched the medicine pouch at his neck, matching the one she wore. "Together, we're stronger than Wallace can imagine." Dawn found them in the training yard, Sarah demonstrating her horse-breaking methods to skeptical army officers, while Running River negotiated terms. The stallion that had panicked yesterday now responded beautifully to her commands, showcasing the effectiveness of their combined approaches. "Never seen anything like it," Colonel Matthews admitted, watching Sarah work. "Gentle but effective. How many horses could you train using this method?" 50 by summer's end," Running River replied. "With our combined crews." The colonel nodded. Thoughtfully, "Gentle horses mean fewer injured soldiers, and your reputation for fair dealing." He extended his hand. "Let's discuss numbers." By noon, they had a signed contract, larger than Wallace could have guessed, but their victory felt hollow when a messenger arrived with news from home. Cattle raiders hit the north pasture. Young. Hawk reported, his horse still breathing hard. 30 head taken. They left this. The note was simple. "Reconsider the offer. Next time will be worse." Sarah crushed the paper in her fist. "He's escalating." Running River's face was grim. "He mistakes patience for weakness." He turned to young Hawk. "Tell Morning Star to gather everyone, all our people, all our allies. When we return, we show Wallace what true strength looks like." They rode home together, pushing their horses as hard as they dared. The army contract had given them resources, but Wallace's attacks threatened everything they'd built. As they crested the last hill overlooking their land, Sarah reined in beside her husband. Below, their ranch spread out in the evening light, people from both their worlds working together to repair the raid's damage. "Look," Running River said softly, "they didn't run. They didn't divide. They stood together." Sarah felt fierce pride surge through her exhaustion. "Wallace doesn't understand. He thinks he's fighting two people. He's fighting a dream," Running River finished, "one bigger than his hatred." Together they rode down to their waiting family, ready to stand against whatever came next. The broken fence post they'd found at the hotel now seemed like a promise. Rather than a threat, what others tried to break they would rebuild stronger. The old photographs spilled across their kitchen table like scattered memories, sepia-toned moments frozen in time. A spring storm raged outside, giving them a rare, quiet evening to sort through the water-damaged boxes they'd rescued from the ranch's root cellar after the raid. "Who's this?" Running River held up a faded image of a young woman in a riding habit, her face bright with laughter. Sarah smiled, touching the photograph gently. "Me, at 20, the day Tom taught me to break. Horses, She glanced at her husband. "I was terrible at first." "I doubt that." "It's true, too gentle," Tom said. "Until I learned that gentleness, used properly, is stronger than force." She shuffled through more photos, then paused. "Is this Maria?" Running River took the photograph she'd found. A beautiful Mexican woman in a mixed style of dress. European. Blouse over traditional skirts, standing proudly beside a younger version of himself. "Our wedding day," he said softly. "She made that blouse herself, embroidered it with both our traditions." His finger traced the image. She too believed in building bridges. Sarah found another photo underneath. Maria teaching young Cheyenne girls to sew, her face animated as she explained something. "She started a school," Running River explained, "said education was the best weapon against prejudice." He smiled at a memory. The tribal elders were scandalized at first. A Mexican woman teaching our children, but she won them over, one student at a time. "Like Tom," Sarah mused. "Remember that training manual I showed you? He wrote it after, realizing most ranch hands couldn't read well enough to follow written instructions. Spent winters teaching them their letters. They continued through the photos, their shared past unfolding in parallel stories. Tom's first cattle drive, Maria's first successful horse trade, small victories and shared dreams that had shaped them both. "Look at this." Sarah pulled out a photograph she'd never noticed before. In it, Tom stood with a much younger Running River, both men examining a horse. "When was this?" Running River's eyes widened slightly. "The spring trade of '82. I remember that day. Your husband was fair when many others weren't. Said skill mattered more than a man's origins. He never told me. Perhaps he thought it unremarkable. Good men often do." Running River gathered the photos carefully. "We carry them with us, you know. Tom, Maria, their love made us who we are." Sarah touched the ring at her neck. "Do you think they'd understand what we've built here? Maria would laugh at the scandal we've caused." His eyes crinkled. "She always said love makes its own rules. Tom, too. He proposed to me at a cattle auction of all places. Said he couldn't wait for a proper setting because love doesn't bow to convention." The storm outside grew stronger, rain drumming on the roof. Sarah lit another lamp as darkness crept in, casting warm light over their memories. "I was afraid," she admitted quietly, "after Tom died. Not of being alone exactly, but of losing. Who I was without him." Running River nodded. "After Maria, I thought perhaps that part of life was finished, that leading our people would be enough. And now, I know that love doesn't end. It transforms." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Like us." Sarah interlaced her fingers with his, feeling the strength and gentleness there. Their marriage had begun as an alliance, a practical solution to mutual problems. But somewhere between shared struggles and quiet evenings like this, it had become something more. A loud crack of thunder made them both jump, then laugh at their reaction. Running River stood, drawing Sarah up with him. "Dance with me? Here! Now! Maria taught me to waltz in a thunderstorm." He pulled her closer. "Said nature's music was better than any band." Sarah let him guide her in a slow circle, remembering other dances, other storms. Tom had 2 left feet, kept apologizing in time, he stepped on mine. "And did you mind?" "No," she smiled at the memory. "Love makes up for a lot of stepped-on toes." They moved together in the lamplight, sharing stories of first loves and second chances, of lives that had prepared them for this unexpected joy. Outside, the storm raged on, but in their warm kitchen, surrounded by memories of those they'd lost and evidence of the life they were building, Sarah and Running River had found their own kind of peace. Later, as they carefully packed away the photographs, Sarah paused with one last image in her hand. Their wedding day, the 2 of them wrapped in Maria's blanket, their faces bright with hope and determination. "We should frame this one," she said. Running River looked at it over her shoulder. "Yes, to remind us that love is never too late, and wisdom knows no season." The storm began to ease, but they stayed up late into the night, adding their own Stories to the family journal, writing their chapter in the continuing tale of love's power to transform and heal. The territorial courthouse in Cheyenne loomed before them, its wooden steps worn by years of justice and injustice alike. Sarah clutched the leather folder containing their legal documents, deeds, contracts, and marriage license, each paper representing a piece of their threatened dream. Ready? Running River stood beside her, commanding in his formal attire that bridged both worlds, traditional Cheyenne chief's clothing paired with a proper Western suit jacket. "Born ready," Sarah replied, though her voice betrayed tension. The courthouse steps were crowded with spectators, drawn by the unprecedented nature of the case. Preston Wallace's legal challenge lay within, a document thick with citations of outdated laws and carefully worded prejudices. He questioned not just their marriage's legitimacy, but their right to combine properties, train army horses, or teach their mixed methods to others. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Wallace sat at the plaintiff's table with two expensive lawyers from Denver. His confidence radiated across the room, built on generations of unchallenged power. Judge Harrison entered, his aged face revealing nothing. "Unusual case we have today," he began, scanning the packed gallery. "Mr. Wallace claims the marriage and subsequent property arrangements between Sarah McAllister and Chief Running River violate territorial statutes. We'll hear arguments." Wallace's primary lawyer rose, smooth as silk. "Your Honor, this case centers on the preservation of proper order. The defendants have attempted to circumvent established property laws through a marriage of questionable legitimacy." Sarah felt Running River tense beside her. Their lawyer, James Cooper, young, idealistic, and recommended by the Army colonel, stood. "Your Honor, my client's marriage is fully documented and legally registered. The property transfers followed. All current territorial laws." "Current laws," Wallace's lawyer emphasized. "But what of Traditional Property Statute 47, established 1851? It specifically restricts property combinations between," he paused delicately, "different communities. That statute was effectively superseded by the Treaty of 1868. Cooper countered. "Furthermore, Chief Running River's status as a recognized business leader, a tribal leader," Wallace's lawyer interrupted, "attempting to expand influence beyond established boundaries." Running River stood suddenly. "Your Honor, I request permission to speak." The judge considered, then nodded. "Unusual, but these are unusual circumstances. Proceed." Running River moved forward, his presence commanding attention. "I stand here as many things: a Cheyenne chief, a successful businessman, a widower who found love again. But mostly, I stand as a man who believes in building bridges, not walls." He gestured to the documents before the judge. "These papers speak of laws and statutes, but look beyond them. Our marriage has already proved its worth to the territory. Our combined methods train better horses for the army. Our shared knowledge helps settlers and tribal members alike survive and prosper." Sarah stood to join him, their shoulders touching. "Your Honor," she added, "they claim we violate tradition, but the greatest tradition of the American frontier is adaptation, learning from each other, growing stronger together." Wallace's lawyer started to object, but Judge Harrison waved him silent. "Mrs. Running River makes an interesting point. This territory was built by people willing to forge new paths." He lifted a paper from his desk. "I have here a letter from Colonel Matthews praising the defendant's horse training program, and another from the territorial governor himself, noting the reduced tensions in the region since this unusual partnership began." He fixed Wallace with a stern gaze. "You cite laws meant to divide and control, but the highest law of this territory is progress. Real progress, not the kind that profits only a few." Wallace stood, his face flushed. "Your Honor, surely you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting, Mr. Wallace. I'm ruling." The judge straightened. "The marriage between Sarah McAllister and Chief Running River is declared valid and binding. Their property arrangements, being properly documented and beneficial to the territory, will stand. The gallery erupted in mixed reactions, cheers from their supporters, angry mutters from Wallace's allies. But Sarah barely heard them. She was looking at Running River, seeing in his eyes the same mix of triumph and tender relief she felt in her heart. Furthermore, the judge continued, "I'm ordering a review of all property transfers in the region over the past 5 years." He smiled thinly at Wallace. "To ensure everyone has been following the laws they're so eager to enforce." Wallace stormed out, his lawyers hurrying behind. Sarah and Running River accepted congratulations from their supporters, but they knew this wasn't over. Wallace would find other ways to fight them. Outside the courthouse, Running River took Sarah's hand. "You were magnificent." "We were magnificent," she corrected. Together, they descended the steps into bright sunshine, their joined hands a declaration of victory. Behind them, the territorial capital sprawled under the vast Wyoming sky. Before them lay the long ride home, where their people waited to hear the news. "He'll try again," Sarah said quietly. "Yes." Running River helped her mount her horse. "But we'll be ready, and stronger for every challenge." They rode out together, leaving the courthouse and its battles behind. They had won this fight not just with laws and papers, but with the power of their shared vision. Let Wallace plot his revenge. Love, they had learned, was the strongest weapon of all. Support came in unexpected ways after their court victory. Sarah stood on her porch early one morning, watching a stream of wagons and riders approaching the ranch. Leading them was Mary Watson, the settler they'd helped during the horse raid. Clutching a petition in her hands, "We've been talking," Mary announced, dismounting. "After what you and Running River did for us, after seeing you stand up to Wallace in court, well, we want to make our position clear." She handed Sarah the petition. Page after page of signatures filled the sheets, representing nearly half the territory's settlers and a dozen tribal leaders. "What is this?" Sarah asked, though the title made it clear. "Petition in support of combined training programs and cultural exchange." "We're tired of being afraid," Mary explained. "Afraid of raiders, afraid of failing crops, afraid of each other. Your way, teaching each other, helping each other, it works." Running River emerged from the house, and the crowd's respectful silence spoke volumes. Gone were the suspicious glares of months past, replaced by genuine regard. "My wife and I have always believed in the power of shared knowledge," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "But it takes courage to change old ways of thinking." Bill Watson stepped forward. "Speaking of courage, we've organized a watch system. Any trouble at your ranch, day or night, you'll have neighbors responding within the hour." Sarah's throat tightened. These were the same people who'd once whispered about her age, who'd turned away when Wallace pressured her to sell. Now they stood in her yard, offering alliance and protection. "There's more," Mary continued. "We want to formalize the training programs. Regular classes in horsebreaking, cattle management, traditional medicine, everything you've been teaching informally." Young Hawk, who'd been quietly observing, spoke up. "Our elders have discussed this. They approve sharing certain tribal knowledge, if taught with proper respect." Sarah looked at Running River, seeing her own hope reflected in his eyes. This was what they'd dreamed of, not just survival, but true community. "We'll need to organize properly," Sarah said. "Set up schedules, maybe build a proper training area." "Already thought of that," Mary grinned. "Look at the back of the petition. The final pages contain detailed plans, volunteer labor commitments, material donations, even a rough blueprint for expanding the training facilities." "Why now?" Running River asked, though his slight smile suggested he knew. "Because you proved it could work," Bill Watson replied. "A white widow and a Cheyenne chief, building something better than either could alone. If you can bridge that gap, we can all try harder." The gathering turned into an impromptu planning session. Sarah watched settlers and tribal members working together, mapping out future classes and improvements. Near the barn, Mary Watson's youngest daughter was learning Cheyenne words from Morning Star, while two young tribal women practiced English with the schoolteacher. "Look what we started," Sarah murmured to Running River. He squeezed her hand. "Look what love started." Later, after the crowd dispersed, they sat on their porch watching the sunset. The petition lay between them, its pages heavy with promise. "Wallace won't like this," Sarah said. "All these people choosing sides openly." "They're not choosing sides," Running River corrected. "They're choosing community. That's what he fears most, people realizing they don't need his kind of power anymore." Sarah leaned against him, feeling the steady strength of his shoulder. "When did you get so wise?" "When I married a woman who taught me that love is braver than fear." He chuckled. "Though I suspect you knew that long before me." The evening wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, organizing classes, managing expectations, protecting what they'd built. But tonight, watching the stars emerge over their united community, Sarah knew they'd already won the most important battle. They'd proven that love, whatever form it took, could build bridges strong enough to bear any weight. And in doing so, they'd given others the courage to cross those bridges too. "We should celebrate," Running River said softly. "What do you have in mind?" He stood, offering his hand. "I believe I still owe you a dance." As they swayed together on their porch, Sarah remembered another dance in their kitchen during a storm. They'd come so far since then, growing not just closer to each other, but into leaders of a movement they'd never planned to start. Love, it seemed, had plans of its own. The victory document lay unsigned on Wallace's desk, his face twisted with barely contained rage. Around him, the bank's board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Sarah and Running River sat calmly across from them, while Colonel Matthews stood by the window, his army uniform adding official weight to the proceedings. "This is blackmail," Wallace spat. "This is justice," Colonel Matthews corrected. "The investigation your own lawsuit triggered has been enlightening." Sarah placed another document on the desk, a detailed record of Wallace's property acquisitions. Over the past decade, each page told a story of manipulation, hidden liens, and pressure tactics used against vulnerable ranchers. "Interesting reading," she said quietly. "Amazing what people will share once they're not afraid anymore." Running River leaned forward. "You tried to destroy what we built. Instead, you revealed what you destroyed." The board members exchanged glances. Their chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Wallace, in light of these findings, the board requires your immediate resignation." "You can't," Wallace started. "We can and we will." The chairman's voice hardened. "Sign the agreement. All of it." Sarah watched as Wallace's world crumbled. The agreement would transfer control of his illegally acquired properties to a community trust, jointly managed by settler and tribal representatives. His banking career was over. "Everything I built," Wallace's hand trembled as he reached for the pen. "You built nothing," Running River said. "You only took. There's a difference." As Wallace signed, Sarah remembered their first confrontation, when he'd dismissed her as too old, too weak to matter. She felt neither old nor weak now. She felt triumphant. Colonel Matthews spoke up. "The Army's expanding its horse contracts. The territory needs your training programs more than ever. And the trust will ensure fair access to land and resources," the chairman added. "Your vision of cooperation. It's the future of this territory." Wallace stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. Without a word, he stormed out, leaving behind the power he'd spent a lifetime accumulating. Running River gathered the signed documents. "It's done." But Sarah knew it was more than done. It was a beginning. Outside the bank, their supporters waited to hear the news. Mary Watson, Bill and his family, young Hawk, Morning Star, and dozens more who'd stood with them. They emerged into sunshine, holding the victory papers high. The cheer that went up echoed down Sweetwater's main street, drawing more people to join the celebration. "We did it," Sarah whispered, gripping Running River's hand. He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. We did more than win a fight. We changed minds. Later, at home, they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades. A victory. The celebration continued in their yard, settlers and tribal members sharing food, stories, and dreams of the future. "Look!" Running River pointed to where young Hawk was teaching Bill Watson's son some Cheyenne words, while Mary Watson showed two tribal girls her bread-making secrets. Hard to believe this all started because a widow was too stubborn to give. "Up her ranch," Sarah mused. Running River laughed. "No, my love, it started because that widow showed everyone what courage looks like. The rest," he gestured to their gathered community. "This was simply love doing what love does best. And what's that? Growing, healing, building something stronger than hate or fear could ever be." Sarah leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. They'd faced every challenge together, grown stronger with each test. Their love had transformed not just their lives, but an entire community. In the dying light, their joined lands stretched out before them, no longer divided by fences or prejudice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build and teach and grow. But tonight they celebrated not just their victory over Wallace, but the triumph of love over fear, of unity over division, of hope over hatred. They had proven that it was never too late for love, never too late for change, never too late to build something beautiful and new. The sun set on the old way of thinking and rose on the world they had dared to dream into being. Spring came to the Wyoming territory in a riot of wildflowers and possibility. Sarah stood in their new garden, a blend of traditional herbs and Western plantings, watching Running River teach a group of settlers about native growing techniques. She held a packet of mixed seeds in her hand, gifts from both communities for their shared future. "The old ones say to plant with the quarter moon," Running River was explaining, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "But more important is knowing your land, feeling its rhythms." Sarah smiled, remembering similar lessons from her grandmother. Some wisdom crossed all boundaries. "Sarah!" Mary Watson called from the training corral. "The new mare's ready!" The mare in question was a wedding gift from the community, a beautiful paint with both quarter horse and Indian pony blood. Like everything else in their lives, she represented the best of both worlds. Running River caught Sarah's eye across the garden, his face softening with pride and love. These moments happened more often now, quiet acknowledgments of how far they'd come, how deep their connection had grown. "Go," he said, eyes twinkling. "Show them how it's done." In the corral, Sarah demonstrated her gentle braking technique to a mixed group of students. Young Hawk translated for the tribal members while she worked, adding his own insights. "See how she reads the horse's signals?" he explained. "This is what Uncle Running River saw in her first. The ability to bridge, understanding." The mare responded beautifully, and Sarah felt that familiar surge of joy, not just from working with horses, but from sharing knowledge, building connections. Later, as the sun began to set, Running River found her in their kitchen. Without a word, he drew her into a dance, humming a melody that blended Cheyenne rhythms with a Western waltz. "What's the occasion?" Sarah asked, though she moved with him naturally now, their bodies knowing each other's rhythms. "Do I need one?" His eyes crinkled. "Perhaps I simply love my wife." The words, once practical, now carried deeper meaning. Their marriage had grown like their garden, carefully tended bloom by bloom, until something beautiful and strong took root. "The Army colonel wrote," Running River said as they swayed, "they want to expand the training program to other territories. Can we manage that?" "Together?" He smiled. "We can manage anything." Outside their window, the evening activity continued. Morning Star was teaching a group of settler women about medicinal herbs while they shared preservation techniques. Children played games that mixed languages and traditions, creating their own new ways of being. "Remember when we thought we were too old for new beginnings?" Sarah mused. Running River's hand tightened on hers. "We were foolish then. We were afraid. And now? Sarah reached up, touching his face gently. The gesture, once unthinkable, between them now felt as natural as breathing. Now I know that love doesn't count years, she said. It counts moments, like this one. He leaned down, kissing her with tenderness that spoke of hard-won understanding and careful nurturing. They had grown into love slowly, surely, building trust with each shared challenge and quiet triumph. A commotion outside drew them apart. Young Hawk was leading a group of riders into the yard, their horses laden with trading goods. "The first graduates of our program," Running River explained, "back from their first successful trading expedition." They went out to greet them, watching pride bloom on young faces as they reported their achievements. These were the fruits of their work, not just successful trades, but confident young people who moved easily between worlds. As night fell, they sat on their porch, a habit that had become precious ritual. Running River's arm around her shoulders felt like home, like belonging. "We should plant roses," he said suddenly. "Roses? Maria loved them, and I remember seeing them in your old garden before." Sarah squeezed his hand, understanding. "Then we'll plant roses. Red ones for Maria, yellow for Tom, and white ones for us," Running River added, "for new beginnings." Together they watched the stars emerge, each one a light in the darkness, like the many small hopes they'd nurtured into reality. Love, they had learned, was like their garden. It needed tending, patience, and faith in tomorrow's blooming. But, with care and courage, it could grow in any soil, defy any season, and produce beauty that transformed the world. 1 year to the day after their wedding, Sarah and Running River posed for a new family portrait on their expanded ranch. The photographer adjusted his camera while their growing family gathered. Morning Star and Young Hawk, the Watson family. Their students, ranch hands, and tribal members who had become as close as blood. "Everyone ready?" the photographer called from beneath his black cloth. Sarah felt Running River's hand slip into hers, strong and sure. How far they'd come from that first meeting at the horse auction, when she'd been a desperate widow and he a potential savior. "Wait," Morningstar called, bringing forward a cradle board. In it lay her newborn daughter, the first child born to their blended community. She had named the girl Sarah River, a bridge between worlds. The photographer captured the moment, not just faces and forms, but the spirit of what they'd built. The image would hang in their ranch house for generations, testament to love's power to transform. After the photographer left, their people lingered for the celebration. Tables groaned with dishes from both cultures, and the air filled with music that blended tribal drums with fiddle songs. "Remember our first dance?" Running River murmured, as they watched Young Hawk teaching settler children traditional steps. "In the kitchen during the storm," Sarah smiled. "You said nature's music was better than any band. I was wrong." He gestured to the mixed melodies rising around them. "This is better." Sarah touched the medicine pouch at her neck, now accompanied by both Tom's ring and Running River's latest gift, a silver pendant that combined Cheyenne and Western designs. "Look there," she said, nodding toward Mary Watson, deep in conversation with tribal elders about expanding the Healing Arts program. "And there," she indicated Bill Watson and Young Hawk planning the next horse training session. "We gave them permission," Running River observed, "permission to believe in something bigger than old hatreds." The afternoon sun gilded the scene, catching the newly raised buildings that housed their growing programs. The Army contract had expanded, their training methods now sought after across territories. But more importantly, their model of cooperation had sparked similar efforts in other communities. "Chief Running River!" A young settler boy ran up, his face eager. "Will you tell us the story again, about how you and Miss Sarah changed everything?" Running River's eyes met Sarah's, twinkling with memory and love. "Which story would that be? The one about a widow too stubborn to give up? Or about a chief who found wisdom in unexpected places?" "Both," the children chorused, others gathering to listen. Sarah and Running River settled onto the porch steps, their usual spot for watching the world unfold. The children sat around them, faces turned up expectantly. "Well," Sarah began, "it started with a horse auction and a broken fence." Running River took up the tale, their voices weaving together like the very fabric of their shared life. They told of challenges faced and overcome, of love that defied convention, of courage that inspired change. As they spoke, Sarah watched their legacy in action. Children of both worlds playing together, elders sharing wisdom, young people learning to move confidently between cultures. Their love had rippled outward, touching lives they'd never imagined. Reaching, the setting sun painted the sky in colors that belonged to no single tradition but glorified them all. Their home stood as a beacon of what was possible when love overcame fear, when wisdom defied age, when hearts opened to unexpected joy. And that, Running River concluded to their rapt audience, is how love builds bridges stronger than any wall. Sarah leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. They had fought for this peace, earned every moment of joy, proven that love could bloom in life's autumn as sweetly as in its spring. The stars began to emerge, eternal witnesses to their continuing story. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and teach and love. But tonight, surrounded by the family they'd forged from two worlds, Sarah and Running River celebrated not just their anniversary, but the power of love to transform everything it touched. 5 years had painted silver through Sarah's hair and deepened the wisdom lines around Running River's eyes. But time had only strengthened what they'd built. Their wisdom journal, started in those early uncertain days, now filled several volumes, each page recording their journey in 2 languages. On this autumn morning, Sarah sat at their kitchen table, adding a new entry while watching through the window as Running River led a training session. The yard bustled with activity. Their school had grown into a proper academy, drawing students from territories as far as Dakota and Montana. "Aunt Sarah!" Young Hawk's daughter burst in, her dark braids flying. "The governor's here!" Sarah smiled, remembering a time when such a visit would have meant trouble. Now it was routine. Their ranch had become a model for territorial integration programs. Outside, the governor's carriage pulled up beside wagons and horses from both settler and tribal communities. Sarah watched Running River greet him with the quiet dignity that had first drawn her heart. "Mrs. Running River," the governor called, tipping his hat. "Your methods are spreading. 3 new combined training centers opening this month alone. And the original still has much to teach," Running River added, coming to stand beside his wife. They had grown old together in the best way, not fading but blazing brighter, their love setting an example that had changed the territory forever. The academy yard filled with students and teachers. Mary Watson's eldest daughter now taught healing arts, combining her mother's herbal knowledge with traditional medicine. Young Hawk had become head trainer, his gentle methods proof of Sarah's lasting influence. "Tell us again," a new student asked during the afternoon gathering, "about the widow and the chief." Sarah and Running River exchanged glances, sharing a private smile. Their story had become legend, told around fires and in schoolrooms as proof that love knew no boundaries. "Better yet," Running River said, "let us show you." They walked their expanded lands together, the governor's party following as they pointed out each achievement. The training grounds where army horses still learned their paces. The healing gardens where 2 traditions blended into something stronger. The school buildings where languages and cultures mixed freely. And to think, the governor mused, it all started because love proved stronger than prejudice. Sarah touched the medicine pouch she still wore, feeling Tom's ring and Running River's pendant beneath. It started because 2 people dared to believe in second chances. That evening, after the visitors departed, Sarah and Running River sat in their usual spot on the porch. Time had worn smooth paths in their land and in their hearts, deepening their connection with each passing season. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked softly. Taking a chance on a widow everyone else had written off? Running River's laugh rumbled deep in his chest. Do you regret believing in love when others said you were too old for dreams? Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining with practiced ease. Below them, the academy lights twinkled in the gathering dusk. Students' voices carried on the evening wind, speaking multiple languages, sharing ancient wisdom and new discoveries. We built something beautiful, Sarah murmured. No, my love. Running River kissed her silver-streaked hair. We built something lasting. In their wisdom journal, Sarah had written that morning, love, like the prairie grass, grows stronger through adversity. It bends but does not break. It seeds itself in unlikely places, and when tended with courage and patience, it transforms the very earth it grows in. Running River had added beneath in Cheyenne, two hearts, like two streams, joined to form a river strong enough to carve new paths through stone. Their love had indeed carved new paths, through prejudice, through fear, through the very fabric of their world. They had proved that age was no barrier to love, that wisdom could bloom in life's autumn, that hearts could find home in unexpected places. As night fell over their ranch, stars emerged to witness their continuing story. Sarah and Running River sat together, watching the future unfold in the lights below, knowing their legacy would live on in every lesson taught, every bridge built, every heart opened to love's endless possibility. They had dared to write a new kind of love story, one that celebrated wisdom over youth, understanding over prejudice, and the courage to believe that love, true love, was never too late to transform the world.